Hey all, I have a hopefully short one for you today. This is in response to a question that I got actually this morning in a private message where I've talked a bit and shown a little bit of my use of projection for translating the prelim stages into the full-size painting. And the question I got was about basically matching the piece, basically setting the corners to the corners of the piece. What's the most efficient and accurate way to do that? I'm going to talk mostly about that, and it's pretty like nuts and bolts, tips and tricks type of stuff. I will just say off the bat, I'm not really going to talk too much about the practice of projection, although I know that this is a topic that for some people is, I don't know, people have got their feelings about it. Using tools like photography, projection, camera obscura, and all that kind of stuff have been in effect for, I believe, photography's been around for, I think, getting close to 200 years at this point, and there were other devices predating photography that artists were using. As far as I'm concerned, whether you're projecting, doing site size, doing laying out a grid, printing out your prelim material, and then matte medium and painting on top of that, whether you're projecting a drawing, whether you're projecting photography, whatever it is that you're doing, I just feel like if your hands and your minds are involved in what you're creating, there's no wrong way to do art as long as it's your own ideas and your own direction that's pushing you forward and that you're not taking someone else's work and passing it off as your own. Okay, all that said, so let's get into my method for projecting onto a surface. So I have my surface here behind me, and the projector that I'm using is an Artograph. It is a LED 500 Artograph, which I only mention just for those curious, but honestly, I don't feel particularly tied to this projector, and in retrospect, I might have looked for something cheaper. And I think part of the cost for this projector when I bought it is that it has a lot of features that I don't use. So, because I'm going to show you how I do it here, I think that one of the selling points is that this projector is supposed to have really good keystoning, which helps you correct perspective and distortion. I think I tried to use it when I first bought it and did not find it satisfactory, and this method just makes a lot more sense to me. So the surface that I have to work on here is a 18 by 24 masonite panel, gesso primed. And normally I would have toned my surface and everything right now. I'm not actually going to paint this on here. I'm just going to show you the setup. So it's also easier to see it on the white than on the toned surface. But in person, it's perfectly easy to see in both cases. The sketch that I'm working from here is, I believe this was 8 by 10 proportion. And the surface that I'm working with here is an 18 by 24, which is, so it's a 4 by 5 drawing and a 3 by 4 final surface. So the first thing that I need to do is make sure that the ratios of both are the same, because otherwise if we match it up, it's gonna look wrong. Normally I wouldn't have a sketch or prelim material in a different proportion to what I'm working on, but this is just to help demonstrate like that you need to take that into consideration. So this is a 3 by 4 proportion, and normally my prelim would also be in a 3 by 4 proportion already. But since this one isn't, I have the choice to either crop or expand to make it 3 by 4. So I have my crop tool here already set for a 3 by 4 ratio, and I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, yeah, I don't mind losing a little bit from those edges. I'd rather do that than add empty space, so I'm just going to crop it down to 3x4. And now it's a correct proportion for what I need to do. So the next thing is to make sure that the surface is covered completely by the image that's being projected on it. And you can see that there is a little bit here at the bottom, and I don't know if it's visible, but there's a tiny bit at the top that's not covering. But if you look at the monitor here, you can see that I have plenty of room at the top and bottom. So I'm just going to zoom in a bit. Zoom in a bit, and now the image is completely falling off the edges of the surface. And everything I'm describing here, this is honestly a process that takes me, I don't even know, 30 seconds at the most, 10 seconds maybe to do in practice, but just to describe why everything is happening and the things to keep in mind as you do it is going to take me a little bit more time than that. So the image is overlapping the surface on all sides now, and it looks like it's reasonably in focus. If not, you can adjust focus on, I think, just about any projector. You should be able to adjust focus. And also the distance for a 18 by 24 here, the projector is maybe about 6 feet away from the surface there, 6 or 7 feet away probably. So you don't need a whole lot of space to do this. And when it's not in use, you can see that my projector that I'm using anyway is very small. I just round up the cables, put everything away in a drawer, fold up the tripod and everything. It doesn't need to stay up all the time. It's just something that I use occasionally. So now that the piece is expanded over the entire surface, I'm just going to flatten it first. Make sure you save anything that if you need to preserve layers or anything before you do any of this, make sure you have it saved. And then flatten it. And then I'm going to select all. And then I am going to transform. I'm doing this in Photoshop. You should be able to do this in any photo editing software. I'm not familiar with GIMP or things like that, but my understanding is they're all very capable, all the competitors to Photoshop. I hate Adobe right now, and maybe transitioning off of Adobe products in the future, but for now I'm using Photoshop. So in Photoshop, I'm going to edit and then transform and then distort. And that's going to give me these anchor points at each corner of the piece and halfway through each side of the piece. So all you need to do, this is really like a whole bunch of setup to explain, like now we're at the process. You've got it projected, you've got it filling the overlapping the space. All you're gonna do is grab each point on a corner, and as I'm looking not at my screen, but at the surface, I'm just gonna drag until I see that box and put my cursor that's dragging the box into the corners of the painting. And because you've pre-proportioned these to be the same dimensions, the same ratio of 3x4, when you get all four corners lined up, you're done. You're ready to, that's it. And I don't know why, if it's something to do with the way my projector is communicating with my computer on my specific setup here, it really squeezes the image on my screen. So it looks very wrong on my screen, but it looks correct over here. And I know because the proportions match that when the four corners are lined up in the four corners here, it's going to be an accurate translation. Everything is going to be perfectly, you don't have to get it like perfectly flat lined up or anything like that. It can be off at an angle or something, and as long as you can put those corners where they need to be, your proportions, everything is going to fit to the appropriate shape, and you are going to have a perfectly faithful translation from here. So what I do then is I just take a brush and just what I've heard some artists call landmarking, tracing. Honestly, I just take a brush and I mark all the pieces of information. In this case, I'd probably just faithfully retrace all the line work here. And then when I turn off my projector, I've got my piece on the surface, and I can then move into doing the proper underpainting. All right, that's it. Quick and easy. I hope that's helpful, and I'll see you next time.